Chapter 2411. They came to the parking lot. Daisy still buried her head in Nala's arms even though they had gotten into the car. Edison turned around and looked at them. What happened? Why is she crying? Could it be that she's disappointed because she isn't pregnant? Caressing her head, Nalace chuckled. How can you still cry when you're going to become a mother soon? Won't you feel embarrassed? She snorted lightly and replied, Humph. It's none of your business. Her eyelashes were wet, and Nalace kissed her. What if our baby is a crybaby? I'll have to run here and there, comforting both you and our kid daily. Well, I may become very busy, but I think it isn't a bad life either. Daisy chuckled and smacked him. Nalace secured her tightly in his arms and said, Not going to cry anymore? She buried her head in his shoulder and did not say anything. Nalace asked Edison to start the car. During the journey, Daisy was huffing beside his neck as she placed her lips close to his skin on purpose. Nalace tightened his embrace and pitched his voice low. Daisy. Daisy blinked innocently and looked back at him as she knew he could not do anything to her now. Nalace was caught between tears and laughter as he cupped her chin. Is this some kind of revenge? Who told you not to tell me in advance so that I could prepare myself? Daisy said as she played around his collar with her finger. So, did you know about it a long time ago? Nalace chuckled. I was just suspecting. I didn't know about it. He knew when her period would be coming since he had been with her for so long. He had his eyes on her, so it went without saying that her changes wouldn't escape his eyes. Daisy was stunned. She lay in his arms silently. Even though she was not expecting a baby right now, she was still looking forward to it since this was the first kid she and Nalace would have. Naturally, the Goldmans soon learned about Daisy's pregnancy. When Maisie learned that her daughter was pregnant, she put aside her work and came to Taylorton with Nicholas. Maisie brought a lot of nutritional products as well as a nutritionist and a nanny with her. Daisy was stunned and said, Mom, don't you think you're a bit overreacting? I'm not. I did the same thing as well when Freya was pregnant. Maisie grabbed her hand. You're pregnant now, Daisy. You need to be extra careful. Nicholas, who was sitting on the couch, chuckled. That's right, Daisy. You should listen to your mother. Coleman already has a daughter, and now you're pregnant. It seems like our family is getting bigger and bigger. Maisie chuckled. Daisy turned around and looked at Nalace, who was coming down the stairs. He stopped midway and smiled. But he did not go over to join them. Suddenly, Daisy thought of something and said, Mom, Grandpa, I'll go back to Yarramore with Nolly this Christmas. Nicholas was stunned. He had nearly forgotten that Nalace was one of the Knowles. Smiling, Maisie said, Sure. You and Nolly have already gotten your marriage certificate. It's only right for you to return to Yarramore to visit his parents. Daisy leaned on Maisie's shoulder. Maisie hugged her shoulder and said, No matter where you are, you'll always be our precious daughter. Meanwhile, in the East Islands, the entire southern household was filled with joy to the beam. The courtyard was brightly lit, and everyone had beaming smiles on their faces. Even though it was not a big wedding banquet, it was grand. A dozen luxury cars were parked outside the gate, and the gifts brought by the guests of honor, who were good friends with Sunny, were extremely expensive. Sunny and Damien were receiving the guests in front of the gate. When Waylon walked over, he hastily called him to introduce him to his friends from Southeast Eurasia. This is my son-in-law. You can call him Wayne. Chapter 2412. The guests laughed and connected, as expected of your son-in-law, Mr. Southern. He's handsome. Waylon nodded and chuckled. Thank you for your compliment. Sunny was grinning happily. Of course. Wayne is one of the Goldmans. Even though he's young, he's brave and astute. Even Cam is happy with him being her husband. So I'm happy as well. Goldmans? Are you talking about? That's right. It's the Goldmans from Bassburg. Understanding instantly dawned upon them. Only then did they know that Waylon was one of the Goldmans, and it also explained his extraordinary bearing. Meanwhile, at Yuzu Villa's guest room, the makeup artist had finished Cameron's makeup. She looked at the delicate face through the mirror and exclaimed, "You really have good skin, Miss Southern. I just put on some makeup, and you're as beautiful as those celebrities." Mahina, who was helping Cameron to put on earrings, said, "Of course. Miss Southern has always been a beauty." When Cameron saw the makeup artist picking up the brush again, she asked, "I thought you were done with the makeup." The makeup artist chuckled and replied, "I'm going to do a little touch-up. I assure you that you'll look stunning in your wedding dress." Meanwhile, the staff brought Cameron's wedding dress into the room. Cameron stood up and walked toward the dress. The light that came through the window fell on the wedding dress and cast a layer of shine on it. For a moment, she thought she had gone back to that dream. It was just that this time, everything that was happening in the dream was real. Mahina walked up to her and said expectantly, "Miss, you should put it on." Cameron then went to put on her wedding dress. Everyone looked at her in awe when she came out in her wedding dress. She seemed to be glowing and looked just like someone who came out of a drawing. It was very lively in the courtyard as everyone was chatting and laughing. Sunny looked at his watch and said, "It's about time." He turned to Waylon and said, "Wayne, it's time for you to get your wife." The rest of the people shouted, "Yeah. Let's go get your wife." Everyone on the East Islands knew that Cameron was getting married today. The procession was long and filled with many luxury cars. Sunny was generous enough to reserve Yuzu Villa to accommodate his guests and to cater for them tomorrow and the day after. Cameron was covering her face with a fan inside the room. She was tired and put it down. "When are they coming? I'm starving." She did not know that getting married would be this exhausting. Mahina hastily picked up the fan and said, "I think they're on their way. Please wait for a little longer." "Miss." As if she heard the commotions downstairs, Mahina went to the window and looked downward. A smile appeared on her face as she said, "They're here." Waylon was wearing a tuxedo as well. When they came out of the elevator, and after Mahina opened the door, Waylon gave her a small present. Mahina took the present and said happily, "Thank you so much, Mr. Goldman." Cameron covered her face with her fan. This girl. Before she could prepare herself, someone picked her up from the bed, and she looked at Waylon in surprise. Someone from the side hurriedly reminded her, "Your fan." She hastily picked the fan up and covered her face. A smile appeared on Waylon's face as he looked at her reddened ears. He lowered his head to kiss her forehead and whispered, "You're so pretty, my wife." Chapter 2413. Cameron's face became so red that she tried to hide her face behind her fan. She mumbled, "Stop it. It's embarrassing. We should hurry up and go home now." The smile on Waylon's face broadened. "All right. Let's go home now." When they arrived at the Southern Manor, a few maids sprinkled some flowers on the ground. Waylon turned around and stretched his arm toward Cameron. Cameron lowered her head and placed her hand on his. He carried Cameron into the courtyard as everyone watched on. Sunny and Damien sat in their seats as they watched both Cameron and Waylon carry out the wedding ceremony. Sunny was both happy and sad. He was happy because his daughter finally had found a man she loved. He was sad because his daughter would also be someone else's daughter from today onward. Damien put down his cup when he saw that Sunny was crying. He said, "Why are you crying? It's such a big day for your daughter. You should be happy for her." He wiped the tears off his face and said, "I'm not crying. These are the tears of joy." Damien chuckled. "I know you're sad because your daughter isn't going to be with you anymore." "Of course, I'm sad. Don't you feel sad? She has called you uncle for so many years." Damien laughed helplessly. "Well, if and only if Cam were a boy, then maybe we wouldn't be so sad. Since she was a girl, she was going to marry the man she loved and leave the house." It was still a lively scene in the courtyard at 7 p.m. The food and wine were good, all the guests were happy, and the scene was joyful. After Cameron and Waylon finished greeting all of the guests, Cameron returned to her room. She was starving since she hadn't eaten anything yet. Seizing her chance while no one was coming in, she got up and went to the table to eat the snacks. When Mahina pushed the door open, she was startled and jerked up from the chair. "Oh my gosh, you scared the hell out of me." Mahina couldn't help herself and chuckled. "Miss, I know you're starving. Look what I brought you." Cameron licked the corner of her lips and said, "Stop beating around the bush. I can smell it from here. It's pork knuckles, right?" Mahina placed the plate of pork knuckles on the table. Cameron was starving. She hurriedly took a pork knuckle and started wolfing it down. She asked, "Why did you think of bringing me pork knuckles?" "Master Wayne knows that you must be starving since you hadn't eaten anything until now, so he asked me to bring this up for you." After Mahina finished speaking, the smile on her face broadened. "Master Wayne really cares a lot about you. If he did not care about her, he wouldn't care if she was starving or not." Cameron lowered her head and fell silent. After a short while, Waylon came into the room. Mahina said, "I should go now." She left the room and closed the door. Cameron looked at Waylon fixedly as he walked toward her. He stopped in front of her and looked gentle under the light. He leaned down and wiped off the stain on the corner of her lips. "Are you really that hungry?" She placed the back of her hand on her lips as her eyelashes fluttered. "I haven't eaten or drunk anything since this afternoon, so I'm hungry." "Okay," he replied and chuckled deeply. "Poor Cam." Cameron put down the pork knuckle and wiped her lips with tissue paper. "I thought you were entertaining the guests downstairs?" He laughed. "I didn't want to leave you alone in the room waiting for me." "What?" Ugh." He pressed his lips onto Cameron's, without giving her a chance to say anything. Cameron placed her hands on his shoulders, and felt as if all her energy had left her body. "Wayne." As he undid his button, he said, "Cam, you should call me honey." Neve dash. She did not have the chance to finish her sentence. Sunny told Mahina to come upstairs and get Cameron to go down for dinner. Little did she expect that she would hear the voices she shouldn't hear while she was in the corridor. Chapter 2414. Mahina's face turned red with embarrassment, and she hastily went away. After she came downstairs, she came up to Sunny and whispered, "The young lady and Master Wayne may not be able to come down right now." It went without saying that Sunny knew what Mahina was trying to say. Understanding instantly dawned upon him as he waved his hand. "All right. Keep an eye on the surroundings. Don't let anyone go up to disturb them." Mahina patted her chest and replied, "Leave it to me." At around 9:30 p.m., Cameron hugged the blanket while gritting her teeth. She was fine even if she was hungry. But how could he do that to her? The problem was that she felt good throughout the entire process. Waylon turned around. He held the corner of his forehead with one hand and ran his fingers through her hair. Looking at her angry look, he laughed. "Are you mad with me, Cam?" Cameron sat up and looked at him. She gnashed her teeth tightly and hissed, "No, I'm not." He chuckled deeply and grabbed her into his arms. As he landed a kiss on her cheek, he asked, "What would you like to eat?" "I'll make it for you." She rolled her eyes at Waylon. Suddenly, something crossed her mind, and a smile appeared at the corner of her lips. "I want to eat short ribs. If not, I won't forgive you." There was no way he could find short ribs in the house. Even if he could find short ribs in the house, the market was already closed at this hour. She did not believe that he could make it for her. Waylon put on his shirt and said, "Sure. Short ribs it is." Cameron wrapped her arms around her chest and nodded. "I'll be waiting for you then." Waylon came downstairs and called out to Mahina, "Do we have short ribs at home?" Mahina fell silent for a moment before shaking her head. "I don't think so." He frowned and asked, "This is bad. Cam wants to eat short ribs right now. Where should I get short ribs from?" Mahina's eyes glowed as she replied, "You can try and ask Mr. Wald. He operates a restaurant, so I'm sure he has short ribs." Waylon smiled but did not say anything. He had thought about Damien from the start. It was just that he was not very close to Damien. Besides, it was already very late, so he did not want to disturb him. Luckily, he had Mahina to help him. Soon, Mahina came back with a packet of short ribs. "Master Wayne, are these enough?" He rolled his sleeves up and said, "Yeah, thank you, Mahina." Mahina waved her hand. "Don't mention it, Master Wayne. This is my job as well." Cameron came downstairs and saw that Waylon was cooking in the kitchen. Not only that, Mahina was helping him as well, and she frowned. When she caught the smell of short ribs in the air, she asked, "Where did you guys get short ribs from?" Mahina turned her head around and replied with a smile, "I borrowed a few from Mr. Walt's restaurant." "Didn't you say you want to eat short ribs? Master Wayne is cooking it for you." Cameron was rendered speechless. "How could you help him? Shouldn't you be on my side?" Mahina looked at Cameron and asked, "What's wrong, miss?" Cameron took a deep breath and forced a smile on her face. "Nothing. I'm just thinking about how I should thank you, Mahina." She couldn't believe that she would help him. Mahina thought Cameron was praising her, so she replied, "You don't have to thank me, Mississippi. This is what I should do for you." Cameron was speechless. After Waylon finished cooking the short ribs, he took off the apron and put the dish in front of Cameron. "So what are you going to say now?" Cameron smacked her lips. She had not said he could not find a helper, so there was nothing she could say now. However, she still felt angry. If it were not for Mahina, Waylon might not have been able to make the short ribs. "You don't have anything to say?" Waylon smiled and took the short ribs away. Cameron stopped him and asked, "What are you doing?" "Didn't you say you'd forgive me if I made you short ribs?" he said. His eyes filled with amusement. "I already made it for you. But you didn't forgive me. In other words, this plate of short ribs is useless. I don't want to waste it. So I'm feeding it to the pigs." Chapter 2415. "No, wait," shouted Cameron. Perhaps even Waylon himself did not expect the thing that helped him win over Cameron's heart was his cooking skills. "You want to eat, but you don't want to forgive me," he said with a frown tugging at the center of his forehead. "This is difficult. You're confusing me. I don't know what you want anymore. Did I say I'm not going to forgive you?" He raised his eyebrows. "So you forgave me?" Cameron stretched her arm and reached out for the plate of short ribs. She looked at Waylon and smiled. "Of course, I'm not a petty-minded person. A good woman like me doesn't fight with men." Waylon pushed her hand away and said, "Nah, I guess I should finish this plate of short ribs myself." "No," Cameron pounced on him from the back and hugged him. "I'm really hungry. Please let me eat it." He was stunned. Is she begging me? She looked just like a greedy kitten asking him for food. Waylon turned around to look at her and smiled. "Go wash your hands. Revenge is a dish best served cold." With that thought in mind, Cameron went to wash her hands. After Cameron filled her stomach and was resting on the chair, Waylon looked at her with his fingers crossed under his chin and asked, "Are you done?" She looked at him in confusion. Waylon rose to his feet and said, "If you're done eating, then it's my turn." The alarm in Cameron's heart rang as she watched Waylon walk toward her. Just when she sprang out and was about to run away, Waylon grabbed her and threw her on his shoulder. As he brought her upstairs, she shouted, "Put me down, Wayne. Hey! Can you hear me? Put me down." 2 days later, at Bassburg, the news of Daisy's pregnancy was spreading all over the town. Although neither Daisy nor Knowles came forward and responded to the rumors, her fans had been giving her their blessings in advance. Some of the fans even saw Knowles and Maisie going shopping for baby clothes, so everyone was certain that Daisy was pregnant. Zafir was drinking wine alone in front of the counter. A scantily dressed woman holding a wine glass sat on the chair beside him. "Sir, are you in a bad mood? Do you want me to have a drink with you?" Gripping the wine glass, Zafir asked, "How much?" The woman was dumbfounded. "What do you mean?" Zafir turned around to look at her and asked again indifferently, I'm asking you how much for a night? The woman felt insulted. Her face sank as she sprang up from her chair. F you. She grabbed her bag and stormed away. Zafir continued to drink his wine as if nothing had happened before. Soon, the woman came back with two muscular men. She pointed at Zafir and said, Ron, he's the one who insulted me. The man wearing a gold necklace and holding a bag came over. He threw his bag on the table, and Zafir frowned. He glanced at them and continued to drink his wine without speaking. The bartender felt that something was not right. Just when he came over and tried to do something, the man wearing a gold necklace pointed at him and said, It's none of your business, so stay out of this. After that, he placed his hand on the counter and took Zafir's wine glass away. You're the one who insulted my sister? Do you know who I am? No one in this bar dares to defy me. Apologize to my sister now, and I'll forgive you. Zafir looked at him and said emotionlessly, I didn't do anything wrong, so why should I apologize? You should ask your sister what she has done. If she isn't a hostess, then maybe she should stop going around and flirting with men. The man sneered. How dare you, brat, you asked for it. As soon as the man finished speaking, he punched Zafir, startling the guests sitting around them. After Zafir got up from the floor, he wiped the blood off the corner of his lips and threw himself at the man. Chapter 2416. Zafir's punches were no less than those of the man with the gold necklace. The two fought, and the scene became extremely chaotic in a matter of seconds. A customer called the police immediately and reported that there was a fight, and the police soon arrived at the scene and brought the two under control. At the precinct, Zafir sat on the bench and remained silent while his opponent kept explaining to the police, and he sounded very agitated. But because the surveillance footage showed that the man with the gold necklace was the one who started it all, he was the one who got penalized. Leah hurried to the precinct at that moment. Zafir, you bastard. What the heck were you thinking? She walked up to him. Do you know what time it is now? You got into a fight, and I'm the one you call in the middle of the night to bail you out. Have you lost your mind? She then crossed her arms angrily. You know that this is an embarrassing thing to get yourself involved in. That's why you don't even have the balls to let your family know about this incident, isn't it? Zafir's face was bruised, and it was rare to see him in such an embarrassing and dejected state. I've had one too many to drink. That was all he had to say. One too many to drink? Leah scoffed. I think you look rather sober now. After saying that, she turned to ask the police officer for some ice for his face, but they did not have any, so one of the officers handed her a can of cold Coke. She grabbed it from him and handed it to Zafir. Do something about that swelling and calm the hell down. Zafir then underwent an interrogation, went through some formalities, and signed some papers. 2 hours had passed when the police released him. Leah walked beside Zafir and scoffed. Great, a new director was taken away by the police for assault. This piece of news will become a stain on your career as soon as this gets published online. Zafir Gosling, I've never known you to be someone who'd lose his head so easily, but you really disgust me at this very moment. He stopped, covered his face with his palm, and took a deep breath. Then you could have just left me back in the precinct to rot. If it weren't for the sake of our friendship, who would want to care about you? Leah turned to face him and pushed him, and he staggered back. Zafir, didn't you say that you weren't someone who would get involved with those bullies back then? And that you'd never show your worst side in front of everyone? You've been pretending for so many years, and you're finally giving your facade up now? Zafir pursed his lips tightly and remained silent. You put on a perfect image in front of others, but you act like a good-for-nothing while no one's looking in your direction. I found out that you're just someone who can't take a single L in your life, aren't you? Leah's rhetorical question incinerated some of Zafir's patience. Yes. I don't like to see losses in any part of my life. Zafir tore off his tie and threw it on the ground. But why must I be the loser here? I passionately chose to turn my whole life upside down just for one person, and I'm always ready to give up everything that I've chosen in life for her. However, what did I get in the end? Nothing. I've got nothing. You two think I'm reaping the fruits of my actions, don't you? Yes, I'm nowhere near a position in life where I can match the Goldmans, but I've been working extremely hard. The sole reason I chose to study abroad was that I wanted to be able to stand by her and feel that I'm legitimate someday in the future. He tousled his hair with his 5 fingers. The loosened collar of his shirt looked extremely untidy, and the dirt and wounds on his face made him look like a stray. Leah clenched her fists tightly, then loosened them. After a long time, she said with a smile, "Zafir, to put it bluntly, the only person that you've always been touching is yourself." He froze for a split second and then remained silent for a while. "Everything that you've done for Daisy is what you want to do for her all this while. They're not something that she asked of you. The relationship between you two doesn't bind her to you. She doesn't owe you shit and you two don't owe her anything. Do you really think that she must be with you just because you have the determination to sacrifice everything for her?" Chapter 2417. Leah stepped forward, grabbed him by the collar, and yelled at him, "We're all adults already, so it's time to wake up. Otherwise, why would there be something that's known as wishful thinking? It's because the world is never a fair place. Not everything in life responds or reciprocates to your thoughts. Zafir, if you've already given up on yourself, then I can only say that choosing Noles Knowles over you is the best choice that Daisy has made in her life." Leah let go of him without hesitation, turned around, got into her car, and left. Only Zafir was left behind, standing alone on the spot as the yellow streetlights created multiple slender figures under his feet. Sure enough, Zafir made the news the next day because of the brawl. And Zafir stepped forward to admit it to the public, apologize, and left the conference under the siege of reporters without even turning his head behind. Daisy was a little surprised when she saw the news while eating breakfast. Zafir doesn't seem like someone who'd cause trouble and start a fight. Probably because her attention was not on her surroundings, she did not even notice when Noles was approaching her until he managed to snatch the tablet out of her hand. Seeing the news on the screen, he squinted slightly. Daisy quickly explained, I'm just curious about why he would." "Why would you be so curious about another man's affairs?" Noles placed the tablet down, propped his hands against the back of her chair, and leaned closer to her. "Are you feeling bad for him now that you saw him get beaten?" She choked on her own words. "What nonsense are you talking about?" Noles pinched her chin. "You were totally captivated by the news, so I think you're feeling sorry for him." Daisy blinked, and after a while, she burst out laughing. "Oh my, this is so not you. Noles, are you jealous of Zafir?" He did not even bother to joke around with her. "I told you before. I'm not a generous man." Seeing that Noles was really upset, Daisy put down her fork instantly, raised her hand, and held his cheek. "Hubby, but you're the one that I think about all the time. Even though I'm looking at other men, in my opinion, my hubby is still the best." He responded with a faint hum. "So, is that the reason why you look at other men?" Daisy choked on her reply. "No, that's not it." "What kind of logic is this?" Noles moved half an inch closer to her again, and his eyes were fixed on her. "Yes, that must be it." She clicked her tongue. You're just being unreasonable now." Noles turned away from her and crossed his arms, pretending to feel upset and wounded. "We've only been married for a short time, and you're already thinking I'm being unreasonable. Oh my, so this is how a woman who's had a change of heart reacts to her husband's concern." Daisy was dumbfounded. That line should be mine. Thinking of something, Daisy held back her smile, got up, walked around him, and stopped in front of him. She then wrapped her arms around the belt of his nightgown. "Are you really this upset?" Noles grabbed her hands and said solemnly, "I'm not in the mood right now." "But I am." She stretched out her arms, wrapped them around his neck, pressed her lips against the side of his neck, and bit him lightly. The moment his body stiffened, Daisy instantly knew that he was holding back. She refused to believe that he could still hold back any longer. After a few more seconds of teasing, Knowles almost exploded. He trapped her in his arms, lowered his head, and kissed her so vigorously that it looked like he was about to swallow her whole. Someone's learned how to act naughty so soon, huh? Daisy pressed her finger against his lips. Then are you still angry? Will a coax make things better? He smirked. You actually consider this coaxing? She blinked. Nala's lips landed on the top of her hair, and he took a deep breath. You're obviously torturing me. She knows that I can't do anything to her in the first 3 months of pregnancy. That's why she's acting so unscrupulously. Chapter 2418. Daisy sneered, stood on tiptoe, and kissed him on his chin. Then, should I wait for your retaliation after this? Knowles laughed and hugged her tightly. There's nothing I can do about you now. The two kissed, but Daisy's cell phone rang, interrupting the atmosphere suddenly and causing Nala's expression to dim again. Daisy picked up her phone and saw it was a call from Leah. She looked at Knowles and blinked. Hubby, may I? Seeing that she still cared about his feelings, he did not feel as infuriated as he was minutes ago anymore. He then gave her a peck on the forehead. Go. Love you. She kissed him on the cheek and walked aside to answer the phone. Leah was waiting for her in a cafe. Soon, she saw a woman wearing a mask and hat walk into the cafe. She came straight to her table, took off her coat, looked around carefully, and removed her mask. Leah, what's wrong with Saphir? What happened? Leah stirred her coffee's foam. Who knows? He said he had a little too much to drink, and the other party was the person who started it. The police didn't hold him accountable. They only gave him a lecture and sent him back home. Daisy lowered her eyes, and it seemed that millions of thoughts were flashing across her mind. Leah looked at her. Are you really pregnant? She paused for a bit and nodded. Congratulations, you've actually become a mom so soon. Leah laughed after saying that and added emotionally, I really envy you. You have a successful career, and you got to marry the man you love. Daisy covered the back of her hand. You can do it too. Leah was slightly startled and then laughed out loud. Me? Forget it, I'm not going to ask for too much. I'll just be content with whatever I have. Daisy suddenly asked, didn't you have a boyfriend? Ever since she got to know Leah, it seemed that she had never seen or heard any news about her dating any man. Leah shrugged. Yes, I had. After I went abroad, I got together with a Eurasian master's student. However, we broke up in less than half a year. And the reason we broke up was that he thought I was too mature and rational, but he liked someone younger and more innocent. Is that even a reason? Daisy was puzzled. But after giving it a good thought, she felt that something seemed wrong. So, did he cheat on you? If he didn't cheat on Leah, why would he say something about fancying women who are more innocent? Since he liked a young and innocent lady from the beginning, why waste 6 months' worth of time with Leah? Leah picked up her coffee and took a sip from the mug slowly. Actually, I don't blame him because I realized that I don't like him that much either. Maybe it was because she did not like him that much, so she did not care much about the other party cheating on her and asking to break up. Daisy looked at her and did not say a thing. In her impression, Leah had always been a very rational person, had a very straightforward temper, had never beaten around the bush when talking to someone else, would not hide her emotions from anyone that she hated, and would not pretend to play nice. The two left the cafe, and Leah stopped in front of her car and looked back at Daisy. Daisy, if you have the time, try to talk some sense into Zafir. I think he'll listen to you. Daisy froze in place. After watching Leah get into her car and leave the cafe's parking lot, Daisy's eyes moved as if she was thinking about something. After a while, she picked up her phone and looked for Zafir's number. It's indeed time to have a chat with him. After all, I really don't want him to go astray. However, no one answered Daisy's calls. And just when she was about to give up, a woman answered the call, and that woman was none other than Zoe. Seeing that it was Daisy's call, Zoe laughed. Daisy Vanderbilt, aren't you ashamed of yourself? You're already married, so why are you still pestering Zafir? Daisy was taken aback and frowned. Why is it you? Chapter 2419. Could it be that Zafir has really gotten together with Zoe? What do you mean by that? Is this very surprising to you? Zoe sneered. Take this as my warning to you. Stop pestering my man. After saying that, she hung up the phone and blocked Daisy's number on Zafir's cell phone. Looking at the call that got hung up, Daisy was at a loss for words. Is Zafir really dating Zoe? For some reason, she felt that things were not as simple as they seemed. On the other end of the call, in a villa apartment, when Zafir woke up and found Zoe lying beside him, he instantly pushed her away and sat up. Upon thinking of something, his expression dimmed. Zoe had actually woken up a long time ago. Seeing this, she wrapped herself in the quilt and smiled coquettishly. Mr. Gosling, I'm all yours from now on. Zafir got out of bed, grabbed his shirt, and put it on. Seeing that he did not say anything, Zoe thought he had acquiesced to their relationship and started to feel smug secretly. She then got up and hugged him from behind. Mr. Gosling, I admire you very much. So what happened between us? I did everything willingly. He has the status and background and is also a director. As long as he supports my career wholeheartedly, why would I still have to worry about my resources in the industry? I'm currently one of the most hated celebrities on the internet, but it doesn't matter. As long as I can gain popularity, I'll do anything just to get to the top. Zafir turned around slowly and abruptly grabbed her by the neck. Zoe was astounded. The sudden suffocation caused her face to turn pale instantly. Staring into Zafir's eyes, she seemed to have seen a bloodthirsty killing intent. You actually have the guts to use this trick on me? Let me go. She was about to lose consciousness and die. Zafir pushed her backward, and she was flung away from him and fell hard to the foot of the bed, gasping for air. Mr. Gosling, are you planning to pretend that nothing has happened after sleeping with me? He chuckled with a hint of chill in his eyes. Are you sure about that? She was flustered and lowered her head out of guilt. Zafir stopped in front of her and lifted her chin. In order to get your hands on the role, you're really going all out. If I'm not mistaken, you must have come prepared. Did you arrange for some reporters to appear downstairs, or have you taken some pictures? Zoe's scalp went numb instantly as she stared at him in disbelief. How did he know that I've arranged for reporters to wait downstairs, and that I even took pictures of him in order to blackmail him if things were to not go my way? Zoe pushed him away and stood up with a smile. Even if you know about my plan, so what? You care very much about Daisy, don't you? If I expose the matter between you and Daisy, then Daisy will also fall into a scandal with you, won't she? If he really does care about Daisy, then I refuse to believe that he won't even care. Zafir remained expressionless. That's up to you. I don't care. Zoe was taken aback. What? Zafir suddenly pointed to the camera behind the bookshelf. I have my evidence too, so Miss Markle, do you want to take a look at the surveillance footage? Zoe's footsteps swayed, and she panicked. Zafir approached her. You assumed you've successfully managed to blackmail me into working for you, but what you don't know is that I've actually managed to turn the tide. Chapter 2420. Zoe's shoulders trembled. Damn, I've been careless. Or is this man so terrifyingly insidious? Zafir placed his hand on her shoulder. Do you want to be the lead actress in my movie? Zoe could not even speak at this moment. However, Zafir smirked and stroked her face. It's just a role, so why bother risking everything that you have? I can give you the role. Zoe was dumbfounded. Really? He squinted and grinned while his fingers rested on the neck that was covered with finger marks. Of course, as long as you listen to my orders and do as I say. Zoe really thought that Zafir was willing to support her, and she was exhilarated deep down. But how would she know she would be completely ruined in the future? A few days later, Zafir's studio announced the film preparations, and the lead actress was Zoe. With this announcement, more netizens started talking about Zoe's relationship with Saphir. After all, on the night of the show, the man who attended the event with Zoe was Saphir. At the same time, an announcement about the TV series starring Daisy came out, claiming that it would be scheduled to go live next year. The netizens were looking forward to Daisy's new drama, and the popularity once overwhelmed the news regarding Zoe playing the lead actress. The netizens thought it was a competition between the two, but in fact, it was just a coincidence that both announcements were posted on the same day. Seeing the suspicions of the netizens, Knoles was obviously upset. The internet was making it look like his wife and that woman were secretly competing with each other over that bastard. He directly blocked the public relations account of the media that released the announcements. Daisy, who came into the study with a fruit platter, could not help but laugh out loud when she saw what he was doing. Knoles closed the lid of his laptop and turned to look at her. "What are you laughing at?" She placed the fruits down and sat on his thigh. "You're so childish. Why would you care about this news?" Knoles snorted softly. "I don't like it." She kissed him on the cheek. "Hubby, be good. Waylon and Cameron have come back, so Dad asked us to go back to the mansion." At the same time, in the Goldman mansion, Nicholas and Titus were sitting on the couch and fighting over the phone to watch the video of Cameron's wedding banquet and ceremony that took place in the East Islands. Seeing that Sonny was willing to spend so much money on the ceremony, Titus did not plan to be outdone by his in-law. "No matter what happens, we have to hold a banquet when the time comes too. The Goldmans mustn't embarrass our eldest daughter-in-law." Nicholas shook his head and chuckled helplessly. "They're all children of our family. Why are we putting them in a competition? That won't work. It must be grand. We can't let others think that we Goldmans are treating the Southern's daughter badly." Nicholas was rendered speechless. Cameron turned her head to look at Waylon and said softly, "Your great-grandfather really loves comparing the Goldmans with others, huh?" Waylon smiled. "He's very sensitive when it comes to the Goldmans' reputation. He knew that his great-grandfather was a man that placed a lot of emphasis on honor and reputation since he was a child. It was not that the family must not be overshadowed by the other families in Bassburg. It was just that the Goldmans must not lose the basic grandeur and status that they should possess and showcase." Titus thought of something and immediately looked at Waylon. "By the way, your sister is already pregnant. Why aren't you doing anything about that?" Cameron was surprised. "Daisy is pregnant already? Are you kidding me? How long has it been since we went back to the East Islands? She already has a kid in her womb?" Titus picked up the teacup and said to Waylon, "You're the only ones left now. Now is the best time for you three to give birth. At least your grandfather is still here to help you take care of the kids. Think about the time when your mother gave birth to you three. It was extremely difficult for her, wasn't it?" Nicholas picked up a knife, peeled an apple, and laughed. "Oh, so you actually know how hard it probably was for your granddaughter-in-law to take care of 3 children at once?"